Welcome to the Lida Citroen podcast, your space to grow your influence and elevate your personal brand. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical strategies to help you stand out, lift up others, and leave your mark on your team, your community, or the world. If you're ready to make your voice heard, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome, friends. I am so happy you are here. Today's going to be a really different conversation and a really important one. We were even just practicing it, and Sabrina, who's off camera, was like, this is a message I think we all need to hear. So maybe I need to hear it too, but I'm going to be the one talking. So we'll see how that works. I want to start off and talk about a time that was interesting, let's say. I was laid off in 2008. Do you remember 2008? It was not a great year to be looking for work. In the US, the market had crashed. Personally, I had two sons that were about to go off to college. My husband had just started a new job in tech, no less. So I did the sensible thing. I applied for jobs. For a couple months, I applied for jobs because that's what you do. When you have a title, you go and get another title. And then my husband asked me a question I wasn't ready for. He said, instead of just finding another job, why don't you figure out what you truly want to do with the rest of your career? Pretty simple question, right? But here's the thing you need to understand about me in that moment. See, I'm not a risk taker. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, not once. I like predictable. I like steady. I like a paycheck, corner office, PTO, and 20 years in corporate branding and marketing. Not one of those years had I ever thought about leaving to start my own thing. But that question opened something up inside of me, because what I truly wanted to do was something that there wasn't a job description for. And within days, I wasn't asking who would hire me. I was asking, what would I build? Now, that's usually the part where I'm supposed to tell you I was terrified. And looking back, I probably should have been much more scared than I was. I had 2 months of severance. That was my runway. I had no clients, no plan, no systems, no tools, or even a process. And I never gave myself a timeline or an off ramp or a version of this where I would kind of just see if it worked. People would ask me, how long are you going to give it? As if I should have that exit plan, that exit strategy already in mind. But I didn't. And I wasn't scared. It was the first thing in years that had made complete sense to me. So I did the thing that actually took courage. And I sent an email to a couple hundred people that I knew, and I told them what I was doing. I named it. I called it Lida 360 before I even had a single client, before I knew that personal branding, this thing nobody was talking about in 2008, would become my entire life's work from that point forward. And the replies from all these people started coming in. Things like, I've been telling you to do this for years. I told you you should have your own business. This is what you should be doing, over and over, from people I had known for a decade. They had been telling me, but I had never heard them. And that's the part I want you to sit with. The people around me could see something in myself that I couldn't see. And it took losing the title and standing before an idea that I had no proof I could deliver for me to finally hear them. That's remarkable, isn't it? If you think about it, what were the odds, right? But today, Lida 360 is 18 years old. Today, I work in over 38 countries. I've spoken to thousands of people and coached hundreds of professionals, entrepreneurs, and executives. I've written 7 books that you all have enjoyed. If that isn't proof that this is what I was supposed to do, I don't know what is. And none of it started with a plan. It started with a question I couldn't answer and an email I sent anyway. That's what I want you to be thinking about as we have today's conversation. Because today we're talking about courage. We're also going to talk about vulnerability. Ooh, how fun is that? Right? Get the warm and fuzzies going. But these are the things that define personal brand. These are the things that put personal brand into action. Personal brand isn't something you build and then you polish and set on a shelf like an award. It's something you have to live, and you have to live through every single day in order to get better at it and to solidify the foundation of what your brand stands on. Personal branding is about choice. It's about small, consistent choices to show up as yourself every single day, even if it's uncomfortable. When the stakes are high, when you're not sure, it's the courage that you push through. And here's the thing about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. We can be scared. We can look back and go, oh my gosh, I was terrified. Maybe I was just in a state of shock or in a hyper state of resilience. But it doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means you go through what you're supposed to do. You move forward, you take the action, even if you feel fear. And I have to say, I have worked with some of the most courageous people I've ever known in my life. Some of them are not names you would recognize. They've built groundbreaking technologies or started companies or nonprofits in really difficult times. Some of them have literally fought wars, and they wouldn't describe what they did as courageous. Just like maybe I look back and I think starting a company, that didn't take courage. But once it's done, you kind of look back and you go, I did what I needed to do. Not necessarily because others needed me to, but because it was the thing that I needed to do for myself, for my brand. And not doing it wasn't an option. So I wanted to take just a moment. And of course, I'm going to read a little bit from the New Rules of Influence. If you have the book, I'm on page 45. If you don't have the book, and go to page 45, because in the New Rules of Influence, I unpack the rules that I believe, based on research, based on years and years and years of experience in testing, the rules that are necessary to have influence and to have influence through a personal brand. And I named 10 rules in this book. The very first rule is to be courageous. Today's topic is rule number 1. So I want to read a little bit from the book. Bear with me, but I think it's really important to kind of frame this up. Rule 1, be courageous and push past fear. Rule 1 may be the scariest thing you do. To promote your vision and your voice, to stand out in front and show your soft underbelly to the naysayers and the haters and the online trolls, you have to display personal agency, be bold, and be willing to embrace risk, and to be shamelessly brave. Simple, right? Not even close. Courage means when you believe in a cause, a solution, or an effort, you go forward with gusto and conviction. Courage is not the absence of fear. We can be afraid, scared even, and remain courageous in how we pursue our vision. And then I jump down a little bit later and I say, maybe you're reading this or listening to this and thinking, I'm not trying to change the world. I just want my boss to listen to me when I speak up. And that's great. You need courage too. When we think about the concept of courage, oftentimes we do think about the heroism, right? Saving a baby from a burning building, or leaving a toxic marriage, or leaving a toxic workplace. How much courage that takes, right? But there are other moments that require courage. Sitting in the front of the room instead of the back of the room, right? Raising your hand to say, I'll deliver that presentation. to the shareholders when you really are terrified of public speaking, or talking to your boss when they're in a bad mood. But it's the time you need to get that decision. Those are definitely scary moments. And courage means if you believe it's the right thing, if you believe and you are convicted in your vision, idea, promise, premise, any of it, that you adapt that courage and go forward. It doesn't mean you don't feel scared. We can all feel scared in moments. I have gone on stage when everything right before has gone wrong, power outage, timing issues. And I'm like, what if this happens during my program? And I've been nervous, definitely. But I go forward anyway because I am so passionate about what I'm going to talk about. And I know the difference it's going to make to the people I'm going to share. So I just go. I just go. And sometimes I make my feet move when my head and my heart and my mind haven't caught up yet. That's okay. That's okay. We don't want to always go into situations unprepared because that builds a consistency that doesn't create reliability. It doesn't create trust, right? If I constantly know you as someone who goes out there when you're not ready, that's not a good reputation. But do you have to have it all figured out? Do you have to have everything perfect? No, you don't. And I think about the scenario that I kind of alluded to, that what if your boss is in a bad mood, right? They've just had a really bad meeting and you've got a time sensitive issue you need to talk to them about. You would much rather wait until they are just happy and generous and open minded and all those things, right? But you don't have the luxury of that timing. How do you find the courage to go in there and ask for what you need? Put your feet in front of your mouth and you go. You just go. You do your best to be respectful. You do your best to be sensitive to the environment. You read the room. You pay attention to what your boss needs and what they need to feel. You're responsive, empathetic, all those things. But you can't wait for perfect timing. It just doesn't happen. Or if it does happen for you, let me know how you get it, because I haven't found perfect timing. We just have to go. And we just have to do our best in those moments, even if we're scared. Here's the other thing about courage. It's not an end state. Just like your personal brand isn't something that you build and define and shape and craft and it sits on a shelf. Courage doesn't work that way either. You don't go through a process, build certain courage skills and then say, yes, I've checked the box. Now I can add courage to my resume and LinkedIn profile. I have courage, right? It doesn't work that way. It isn't something that, you get. It's a fluid process and it grows with consistency. The more you see yourself doing it, and then the more afterwards you reflect on that and consider, what did you lean on to get courage? Did you lean on faith? Did you lean on experience? Did you lean on confidence, right? Confidence is not something you're born with. It's not a personality trait. Confidence is a skill. What did you lean on to get that courage? We all have it in us. And if you start looking around your life, you will see a lot of people displaying courage. And these might be unexpected people in your life. They might be people that you really didn't see as having courage. They're making decisions because they believe in it, not because it's easy, not because the popular census is saying this is what you should do. They're doing it because not doing it doesn't feel like an option. That takes a lot of courage. Let's watch for that. Let's look for that. And by the way, at the end of this podcast, I am going to give you some action items, things that you can start thinking about and reflecting on and doing to build up some of these muscles. So let's talk about vulnerability now. And I'm sure those of you who think it's all about being mushy and emotional and sensitive are probably clicking off, but please don't. Stay with me. Um, Vulnerability is not necessarily when somebody presents themselves as emotionally exposed or overly expressive or transparent, and they let every bit of their life hang out. Vulnerability is a realness that is so beautiful and graceful and loving, and it's when somebody shares that side of themselves that they probably wish they wouldn't, but they do it anyway because they know it's the right thing to do. I hear people talk about having walls up, right? In relationships. Oh, I've been burned before. I've been cheated on. I've been left, whatever. So I put these walls up, and it takes a lot to break those walls down with me. And I get that. I get what that kind of trauma and hurt does to someone. And I know that vulnerability is the only way to build true connection. It is the only way human beings connect with human beings. And it's when we show how real we are, how genuine, authentic we are, that we build the kind of connection that matters. So I'm going back to the book to read something else. And this is actually in the rule about being real. And it's where you let others see your true self. Being real necessitates a rawness, a truth, and a vulnerability. Being real, vulnerable, and genuine is core to building influence. If you can't share who you are, what you feel, what you need, and what you believe, how are we supposed to trust that what you tell us or ask us to do is good for us? Right? Think about the people you trust, the people who will recommend something either to a general audience or to you. They've shared a vulnerability, and that's what bonds you to them. Because even if you haven't had exactly the experience or the lifestyle or the situation that they're talking about that has bonded you, you relate to a human being vulnerable as a human being. That's the beauty of vulnerability. And being real and vulnerable, it is such an important ingredient. I am not advocating that we walk around all day sharing every thought, every vulnerable idea or weakness or fear that we have. But I am advocating that we do more of it, because what we get back is kind of cool. And when I was thinking about this part of the podcast, the thing that came up for me was actually writing this book. So in 2023, I pitched a book idea, a book proposal to a new publisher, a publisher who was known for writing very heartfelt, important books that maybe didn't fall into the business book category. And I'd always been in the business book, right? Control the narrative, executive reputation, exiting the military and starting a civilian career, very business tactical books, great books. But I thought it might be time to do something a little bit different, right? In the words of Monty Python, and now for something completely different. And only some of you will get that. You younger people probably won't. That's okay. And I approached this publisher with a book for women about building influence, about not playing small, not sitting in the back, not holding on to your ideas. Because I had been coaching so many women in multiple different countries, cultures, environments, industries who were doing that. And these women were expert. They were experienced. They were talented, pedigreed, credentialed. They had everything that should advance them to the front of the room, if not behind the microphone, to be the one credited with the vision. They should be the ones speaking up. And I thought, there's a book out there for these women. And my editor, who to this day is one of my favorite people in the world, he asked me a question. He said, "Why do you think this is just a book for women?" So once again, I'm asked a question that kind of stops me in my track. And I think there's a pattern here. I think I just, I really pay attention to these questions. But I had so much respect for him. And his question was so on point. And I asked myself, is it just something women are going through? And then I started thinking about male clients that I'd had who were dealing with the same thing, people from underrepresented or marginal communities, or people who had been marginalized. And I went, wait a minute, this is a book bigger than just women. So I'm like, yes, I think you're right. Let's go write this business book. And he said, here's the thing. I don't know that I want you to write a business book. He said, I want you to write a book from your heart. I'm like, what? What does that mean? What do you mean write a book from my heart? I pour my heart into everything. But he really challenged me. And he goes, no, I want you to write a different book. And I want you to write a book where you model everything you're going to write about and be vulnerable and courageous and agile and all these things that you tell people to do. I want you to write a book from that lens. And yeah, I was scared. I was literally scared. But I knew that in order to make this book what it needed to be, that vulnerability was going to be a big part. As I drafted each chapter, as I talked with my team and said, I don't know if I can go there, their advice to me was just go there. Just put your feet out there. Just go. Just do it and then see how you feel. And I did. I put every idea, I shared things that I had never shared on stage. I'd never shared with people that knew me professionally. I shared in the book. I opened veins to make this book come to life. And was I terrified? 100%. 100%. And the vulnerability is what made the book work and still makes the book work. Because if I just tell you how to do it, but I don't tell you how it worked for me, if I don't share how I was feeling as I went through all the processes and all the steps and all the experiences that shaped my thinking, then I'm just writing a business book. And I wanted to write something more meaningful and deeper. And I have to say, when I get the feedback from all of you, I'm getting choked up thinking about it. When I get the feedback from all of you, that those stories, those examples, those places where I went deep, where I went past what may have been comfortable, those are the stories and the places that bring the book to life and also are most meaningful and memorable to you. So I'm asking you not only to be courageous, but to be vulnerable. Your personal brand has to have a layer of empathy and authenticity and genuineness and vulnerability and realness, especially in this age of AI. Oh my gosh, if there was ever a need for it, it's right now. Because AI creates parody, AI creates sameness, right? We know what an AI generated post looks like. We know when somebody's cover letter or email was run through Claude or Gemini. We know what those look like. What does a real person sound like? What does a real person who's asking for help look like? We can be those people.
Your voice matters. My new book, The New Rules of Influence, shows you how to build long-lasting impact with authenticity, no tie or title required. Get your copy of the book today and start owning your voice.
Now, if you've followed my work for any time, you know that I do have a different opinion about the idea of transparency and vulnerability and being real. I do have a video on my YouTube channel. It's one video which kind of went viral, where I talk about why I don't believe in transparency. Let me unpack it for just a second, because I think it's important here. Being real, the way I define it in the book and also in my work, is letting people see you, letting people hear you, all the braveness that we've talked about, showing your vulnerable side, and trusting your audience won't abuse you. They'll judge you because we judge human beings, but they may not judge negatively. So don't assume that they will. If you weigh in and share a belief, if you comment on something, if you like or agree or take a position, it should be a position you really believe in, right? Not just because it's popular or trending and you want to be part of that wave. Real, trusted brands, witnessed over time, build authentic trust. Now, transparency, on the other hand, is kind of letting it all hang out, right? These are the people who will tell us everything about their life, about their dreams, about their problems, their rashes, their issues, everything. And they pride themselves on being authentic. But I think there's a lot of risk. There's reputational risk. And then in the age of social media, in the age of AI, there's a lot of other risk, right? And the thing is, I think a lot of times we aren't choosing to be transparent. We just kind of get going and then we just let it all hang out. And I think it's risky and it's not required. We can trust someone, we can know someone, we can love someone professionally, online, right? And not know everything about them. That's okay. I think as adults, as human beings, we should keep some things private because they're not relevant to the conversation. They're not important to our brand, and because we are allowed to keep ourselves safe. So I always advise clients or people I'm coaching that have in mind where the guardrails are. Where are the boundaries? And we've talked about boundaries on previous podcasts. Where are the boundaries that you won't cross? The topics you won't engage on, the photos, the issues, the controversial settings you won't be part of. Just know that ahead of time. And then you can be real and vulnerable and loving and beautiful and expressive, but you also know where you don't go because it's a way you keep yourself safe. And there are people who master that. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of thinking, but I strongly encourage you to start working on that because vulnerability is beautiful. Being able to say, I don't know, when asked an important question, or to tell your team, I got it wrong. And take that kind of accountability, that kind of ownership. People don't see that as weakness. They see that as vulnerability and realness. And what it does is it makes them want to be real and vulnerable with you, and they can relate to you. Don't you want people working for you and with you who are going to bring ideas to you or problems before they become really bad problems? Of course we do. So if you're real and vulnerable, then they feel safe, right? The whole psychological safety that Amy Edmondson introduced us to, where they can bring ideas or problems to you before they become huge crisis. That's the whole name of the game. So they have to feel they can trust you and they can be vulnerable with you, and that there isn't going to be retribution for exposing something that might turn into something really bad. The good leaders that we know are the people who let us see that side of themselves. Think about the people you know. Think about the leaders that you admire. They may not have a positional status. Keep that in mind too. They may not have a C in front of their name, but they're people that you admire. They show us who they are, knowing that some things are off limits, right? That's okay. Transparency is not the goal. But we trust what they say is what they really mean, what they believe, and what they think is good for us. That's pretty cool. So how do courage and vulnerability really build your personal brand? Well, if you think about your personal brand as how you show up, right? How you communicate, the relationships that you have and promote, then courage and vulnerability is brand behavior. They are brand behaviors. They are action put to how you show up, what you say, and the relationships you form. So they're not separate. They're not add-ons. They're not nice to haves. They are integral to building a brand that is going to sustain you and build you throughout the rest of your career. Brands are not job specific. Keep that in mind. I talk to a lot of people who say, okay, I left that job and now I'm in transition, so I need a new brand or I need a brand refresh, whatever you want to call it. You're not changing your brand. That would be devastating. So this is what sustains us, is this kind of speaking up and using your voice and being real and sending a signal to the people around you that says, this is me. I believe in this. And whether I'm in this role or this role with this audience or that audience, I'm the same person. Or on Instagram versus LinkedIn or TikTok or X or whatever I'm the same person. That's the signal. That's what we're looking for. And that's what gives other people confidence to believe in us. A brand built on consistent courage becomes a brand known for conviction. Think about people that you would describe as courageous, not unafraid, maybe brave, if you want to use that word, that do the hard thing because it's the right thing, right? I can think of a couple people right now, and they have done things I don't know that I would have the stomach for, but they believed in every fiber of their being that that's what they're supposed to do. And they went forward, and the path unfolded as they took each step. And it is like the most amazing thing to see. And it's easy to think, well, that might work for them, but it couldn't happen for me. Well, I'm here to tell you, I thought the same way until it happened for me over and over and over. My work with the military. I didn't know anyone who had been in the military in November of 2009. But I knew that I was supposed to find a way to help individuals who'd raised their hand to serve in our country. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, but I just knew I was supposed to. And yeah, I bumped into a few walls as I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to go. But then all of a sudden it was like the first door opened, and then that door led to another door. And then that door led to a stage. And that stage led to a conversation, which led to a book, which led to a bigger stage, which it all just started unfolding. And it's because I took the first step. That's what we need more of in this world. And that's what you are listening for. And I am telling you, there is nothing stopping you. Courage is the ingredient. If you look at two professionals who have the same credentials, same experience, same set of skills, one speaks up in a meeting, advocates, questions, offers thought-provoking insights, gives their honest point of view. And then you have the other person who stays quiet in the room, but shares a lot of their opinions in the hallway afterwards. Which one do you think gets the leadership promotion? Which one do you think people want to hear more from? We have to start taking those risks. And if courage is the brand, then vulnerability is the engine, and the engine that builds trust, right? And remember, I'm not talking about you got to talk through every detail of your divorce or talk about every diagnosis you're getting, or you choose what you want to talk about. And Brené Brown has done a lot of work on the idea of shame and vulnerability. And she literally gave an entire generation permission to be real and accept that being flawed, being a little quirky and, not perfect and polished isn't a liability. It's what makes you human. It's what makes other people go, I can relate to that person. I kind of get what they're talking about, even though I haven't been in that situation. It's not a liability. I'm flawed. I'm quirky. I get it wrong. And so do my clients. And so do the people who read my books and listen to this podcast and work for me and work with me. We're all flawed. We all get it wrong. But it's what we do with that makes the difference. And remember, I'm going to read this off my notes. A legacy is built through the courage to show up fully, the vulnerability to be known, and the consistency to do both over time. Think about that. So I want to kind of land the plane with the idea that we've talked a lot about heavy stuff, right? Very heavy stuff. I want to remind you that courage and vulnerability are not end states. They're not a place that you get to check a box and then you go, okay, done. What's the next one? They're muscles that you're going to build. You're going to start small. You're going to try something and see how it lands. You're going to test out an idea, a communication, a message, and see what the response is. They're not weaknesses. It's not a weakness to tell people that you don't understand or you made a mistake. You got it wrong. That's not a weakness. That's strength. That is huge strength. And AI can smooth over and replace a lot of our communication, but it can't replace our humanity. And our humanity is what makes us connect to each other. It's not how polished or how well your message sounded. It's the empathy and the softness in your eyes and the shakiness of your voice that makes me feel for you and really pay attention to your message. So I want to give you some action items that you can think about, right? Some things you can do with this message, because I've laid a lot out there and hopefully you're still with me. So this week, I want you to think about one place in your professional life where you might have been holding back your voice a little bit, where maybe you haven't spoken out or you haven't taken the reins the way you know you're capable of. When it comes to courage, I want you to think about, when do you show courage? Is it just at home, but you leave it behind when you get to the office? Can you identify the specific times, situations, and conditions under which you will confidently step forward, even if you're afraid? Think about that. When you do hold back, so maybe that's going along with others for the sake of conformity or staying quiet in certain moments because you don't want retribution or judgment. What would help you have more courage in those moments? What would make you physically put your foot out there and just start moving in that direction? And the last one on courage, I want you to think about who in your life displays the kind of courage you admire, and what can you learn from them? I think of one person in particular who's so strong and so courageous, and I admire this person so much. And sometimes I wish I could be more like them, but I also know that part of their place in my life is so that I can learn from them. And so I do. I learn, I watch, I adopt what feels right to me, and I observe and I reflect, and I enjoy that. I really do. So find someone that you feel has the kind of courage that you can see and feel, and learn from that and see what you can adapt. So here are some vulnerability questions. What does vulnerability and realness mean for you? Not in theory, not academic vulnerability, but in your next conversation, in your next social media post, in your next presentation. How can you identify opportunities for more vulnerability? Is there a place in your professional life where you're performing a version of yourself instead of showing up as yourself? Ooh, sit with that one. Oof. What would it cost you to switch that up? So instead of acting like you think you should be, you actually just be. You are you instead of the version of yourself that you think is required or expected. And finally, do you see the line between real and transparent? Are you clear about what you want to share and what you're not comfortable sharing? Do you know what you want to keep private? Think about that right now as you're listening to this, whether you're on a train, in a car, running, wherever you are. Do you know what areas of your life or beliefs or thoughts, opinions you want to keep private? They don't have anything to do with your brand. They're not relevant to conversations. Think about them now, because when you're in the moment and you're having the conversation, you don't get to suddenly go, "Oop, time out, flag on the play. I don't want to talk about that." Think about it now. And I'm going to ask you to take one courageous step. Just take a step. Just do something. Do something that just pushes you further. Help someone that intimidates you. Learn from someone you really respect. Reach out to someone on social media or an email or in your company who you really admire and want to learn from. Sit in the front of the room. Don't sit in the back of the room. Raise your hand. Ask a question. Offer an idea. Just take one step and see what happens. When you share what you know, as you stretch out past your skis and get uncomfortable, when you lean into fear and self-doubt, you grow your courage muscle. You learn that it's not about being perfect, but about having conviction. It's not about knowing everything, but knowing yourself. And that's on page 48 of the New Rules of Influence. I wasn't sure how this podcast was going to go. I told Sabrina, I was like, I'm not so sure. And I'm pretty proud of it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really do. And I hope you'll message me or drop something in the comments and let me know if this was a message you needed to hear or wanted to hear. Maybe you know someone who should hear a message like this and you want to share it with them. Please do. Please follow this podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some new things that we're kind of cooking in the background that will hopefully come to life real soon. And, I do this podcast because I care about you. I really do. I know these messages in this format will work. I know that they're important. I know that I'm the person who's been tapped to share them with you. The guests that I bring on this podcast are people that I really care about, and I care that they're going to deliver a message for you. So your feedback matters to me. Your compliments are always welcome. But I also want the constructive feedback. If there's something I could do differently that makes it work better for you, let me know. And I'll certainly, ruminate on that. I care about you. I'm so grateful you were here. And until I see you next time, until we're together for another episode, I wish you health, happiness, and all good things.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lida Citroen podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show and leave a review. It helps more people discover these inspiring conversations. For more tools, insights, and resources, visit Lida360.com or connect with Lida on LinkedIn. Until next time, remember, your influence has the power to make a real difference.